Hello, friends. In today's episode, we're going to start our conversation about light. Let it be light. Light marks the beginning of creation. And we as painters, we are creators. We are magicians. We can make two kinds of magic. One is by using our tools, light, color, edges, paint quality, brushstrokes. We are able to create the illusion of form full of volume, existing in believable space that has a sense of atmosphere, depth, and perspective. In the magical act number 2, we compose our paintings to manipulate the viewer's eyes for our paintings to be read in a certain way, and that magic would not be possible without use of light. The French impressionist Claude Monet once said, "Color is my day-long obsession, joy and tournament. But light is the most important person in the painting." Why light? By light we see. As humans, we condition not to look at the shadow because we know that there is very little information in shadow and darkness. For shadow mystifies, hides, and obscures. But it is the light that reveals with clarity the form, the volume, the shape, the texture, the color, the details, the patterns, and much more. So light reveals and shadow hides. But one cannot exist without another. Shadow is created because of absence of light. We can say that light creates the shadows, but it is shadows that support the light. On this example of white vase, we can see how the dark shadow really describes the shape and supports the light. But when the shadow shapes becomes too light and insignificant, the light is able to break through the shadow, and the object doesn't have a sense of solidity and weight. So there is an intricate dependency of the strength of the light and the strength of the shadow. The darker the shadow, the stronger the light feels. I always recommend to keep your shadows dark and solid to support the light in its best way. Shadow shapes are really important in the structure of each object, and it is the shadow shapes that really describe the form of the object. Now, does light act differently depending on the surfaces it falls on? Of course it does. And we can divide all the objects, man-made or organic, on two categories. One category is solid object, the second is transparent or translucent. The way the light acts on something that's solid is very different, or we can say completely opposite to the objects that are transparent. On the example of the solid green vase and the glass green bottle, you can see the differences. I will dedicate a special video to go into the details. But when the light falls on a solid object, it really doesn't matter the color, the value, or the shape of the object. It will act the same way. It will start from the light edge and flow across as well as flow over. So we can say that the light is a flow, a moving force of more to less. The closer the object to the light source, the more the planes of the forms are turned towards the light, the more illuminated they will be, the more light they will receive. The further away the form is from the light source, or the more it's turned away from the facing the light, the darker it will be, the less light it will receive. The light will always act different on something that's very smooth and flat and reflective to something that is very textural and non-reflective. On the example of this white, sleek glazed vase and the very textural pot, we can see how the strength of the light is different. Also, if the object is a solid color or pattern, the patterns always break the light a little more. So the white vase with a blue pattern will be a little bit less illuminated than a solid white object. But again, as a painters, we have the tools to compensate for some of that and to make the blue and white vase feel as lit up as possible. Also, if the object is very dark, like dark black, dark brown, that object becomes very observant of the light. And so on those objects, you might not see contrast or difference between light shape and shadow shape. And so when we paint them, we might approach them differently. Instead of painting a shadow shape and a light shape, we might paint them as a solid dark object and then paint the highlight and spilling of those highlights over the form. The next question I want to discuss is how to light our object in the best way to present the strongest light possible. And that depends on few factors. One of them is a temperature. If we make our light a cool light rather than a warm light, the object will feel more lit up because we associate a cooler light with a stronger light, a daylight. And the warm light we see when the day is almost over, when the sun is setting, the light has this golden color. And so when we paint with the warm light, the light, no matter how strong we make it, it will still look a little less than the cooler light. The second condition is where the light comes from, is the angle of light. If the light comes from the top, as you see on this photograph of the green bottle, the light illuminates only the top planes of the bottle. It limits the space that the light occupies. If the light comes straight ahead, then the shadows are washed out. Without shadows, we can't know the strength of the light, even though the light occupies a large area. But without the shadows, the light is not supported. The best way to describe the form is to light up the object from the upper left corner, allowing all the left planes and some of the frontal planes and the top planes being fully lit up, and only right side planes and the underplanes being in shadow, as well as making sure that your shadow occupies 1/3 of the form, leaving 2/3 of the form for the light to have more space to tell the story about every element, color, texture, shape, details, patterns, and so forth. If the shadow occupies too much of the space, leaving the light very little, of course, it makes very difficult to make the light look lit up and the form being illuminated. The other conditions is to make the light look flat. And may confuse you because we're so conditioned as a painters to want to create the illusion of roundness or illusion of form being protruded or form being receding into the space. When I say make the light look flat, preserve the values, extend one bright light for as long as possible and instead change the temperature, change the edge quality, the paint quality, and saturation of the color. Then you're allowing the light to occupy the largest, flattest space. And that's what makes the light expand and makes the form look fully lit up and be readable across the room. So, because this concept is hard to visualize and hard to explain, on the second part of this video, I will demonstrate how to create the strongest light on the form. And then, by using my tools, value, color, edges, I will show you how to dim that light back into less. So, if you like this video, please subscribe, like, and share. I appreciate your support.